just allow yourself to be. Good. Next, sit up straight, extending the spine upward, getting some length in your backbone and room in your belly, extra room to breathe. Extra points here if sitting up straight increases the sense of poise and balance. Some kind of mental plie, right? Just like perfectly poised there. And just begin to notice the sensations of breathing. During this part of the sit, you're welcome to change how you breathe to be slower and deeper and whatever else, longer on the out breaths, whatever works, but just tune in to those sensations of breathing. Normally I have you contact sensations of relaxation in the body. Let's start out today with sensations of relief and pleasantness in the breath. So, 1 billion years of evolution have made it that when you don't breathe it hurts, but when you do breathe it feels good. You're just kind of used to ignoring that, but if you tune in, you'll notice that just like there's kind of a relief when you eat, you feel pleasantly satisfied. There's relief when you go to the bathroom, there's relief when you sleep. All these functions just kind of bring the body relief and ease and this sort of really backgroundy sense of joy, right? Feels good to breathe. So see if you can notice that aspect of the body sensations of breathing, that they bring with them this sense of pleasantness, joy, relief, nourishment. If you want to, you can use the labels breathing in on the in-breath and breathing out on the out-breath. And just connect with that in the simplest way. Feel yourself breathing, feel the sensations. But see if you can narrow in on the sensations that are pleasant, relaxing, peaceful, joyous. And typically these are going to be kind of small. So we're not looking for some gigantic explosion of ecstasy in breathing, just that it feels nice. Feels nice. So I'll let you do that for a little while here. Good. Now, connect with everything that's going on. So just do Vipassana on all sensory experience. So if you hear a sound, just notice it. Hear, feel something in the room, in the floor, notice that. If you feel something inside yourself, notice that. If a thought arises, notice that. You're just noticing, right? In all sense gates. If you try to do everything all at once in a pile, that might be a little overwhelming. So feel free to do one sensation at a time. But the idea is you're not limiting the field of exploration, just contact anything, anywhere. Notice attention's very free here. It gets to move wherever it wants. You just really deeply contact whatever it lands on, and don't get involved in any past or future thoughts. You can notice that those are there. You don't have to stop those from being there. It's fine if thoughts are happening, but you're not engaging with them. Notice in this particular technique, there's no such thing as a distraction, because everything is allowed as an object of attention. You're not trying to push anything away. It's interesting to notice if you're trying to push anything away. let's engage a little more completely. Try to really contact each object as fully and with as much curiosity and fine-grained contact as you can. Fine-grained exploration, even if it's just for a moment. Just give it a nice, full contact. And if it will help, you can label things like sight, sound, thought, body sensation, whatever. If all those labels get you too confused, you can just say thing, thing, or you could just say present, right? Because really we're just staying present. So just each contact, just say present, like present with this next experience, present with this next experience. So see if you can just drop yourself down into even more intimate contact with the present moment, even more closely, right in there, right in the cutting edge. You're not thinking about these sensory experiences, you're just being there with them. Good. Now reduce down to just what's happening in the you being. So typically that would just be thoughts and feelings. So you're still doing open monitoring style meditation. You're just noticing what's arising, but not paying so much attention to the outside world, not paying so much attention to regular body sensations, but more anything emotional, anything in mental talk, blah, 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 anything in mental pictures. And you're just, again, just noticing. You're not engaging, you're not getting involved, but you're really being present with the moment by moment arising of whatever's happening in the you creature. If you want to, you can use the labels mental image, mental talk, so image, talk, and feel for emotion, but you don't have to. You can just say thought, feeling, thought, emotion, or just present, whatever you want. Can you just sit with whatever it's like to be you right now? Not try to change it, not try to control it, not try to judge it. Just be with what's arising. You're just tuning into what it's like to be you right now, moment by moment. This is a great time to notice if you're avoiding anything. Maybe there's some super ugly thought that just keeps coming up. Well, this is your chance to just sit there. You're not engaging with it, but you're not pushing it away either. Just let it be there. Or there's some feeling you've been trying not to feel. Now it's time to feel it. What have you been running away from? This is the chance to stop running. Be with it. Remember that be with it means contact it, notice it, but do not engage. Don't get wrapped up in it. Just notice what's arising. Good. Now notice the flow or the movement movement of all the thoughts and feelings, not as content, not as even something that you're focusing on individual pieces of, but more like the symphony of movement that's occurring as feelings arise and thoughts arise. It's a kind of waves, intersecting waves, waves of feeling, waves of thinking. A lot of movement, and notice maybe that somewhere at the center of all that movement there's a still point, or not. Sometimes you can experience self as just waves of stuff happening. It might be waves of super beautiful stuff or waves of super difficult stuff. And as waves, it doesn't even matter which one of those it is. It's just waves of stuff happening. Typically, waves of stuff happening feels pretty good. Not always. There can be a tendency to imagine the waves are flat and kind of rhythmic, but if you really tune into what's going on, it's three-dimensional. They're going in all directions, and they're at very many different patterns. So it's a lot more like interesting. The waves of selfing are interesting. Now expand awareness back out to cover the exterior as well. So it's not only thoughts and emotions, but also physical body sensation, no matter how uncomfortable that might be, exterior sound, maybe even the sense of light through your closed eyelids, if your eyes are closed, all that. So back to everything. But now again, instead of kind of going from object to object to object, you're just noticing waves of stuff happenings. Sound swirling around you, feelings happening, body sensations arising. And it's all 3D. It's not flat, it's not a picture of waves in your mind. It's the experience of stuff arising and passing and arising and passing. And that's 3D in experience. And it's like moving in a lot of different directions. If it's flat, stop doing that. That's just an idea. Notice that in the sea of stuff happening, there's nothing to hang on to. There's no solid part or platform to view it from. The platform is moving too, and the solid stuff is dissolving. So this 3D sea of stuff arising and passing is all there is. If there seems to be a platform you're observing it from, just notice that that's just some stuff arising and passing too. Good. I just want to keep going, but we'll stop there for now. Todd, you okay?
I've got a shoulder neck thing that's not so far.
Okay. That looks like writhing agony to me, so just making sure you're okay. All right. It's different to be each of us right now, in this moment, and different to be each of us in every moment. Just the fascinating thing. So I had this, like a whole talk, and I'm just going to throw that out and say, so what was that like? What did you guys do? Questions, comments, reports from your meditation experience? Yes. Talk loud.
When I'm in that space, I can get very, very focused. It's very interesting.
Which space are you describing?
This is the space that I've found that thing that's comfortable, and that's sort of like my anchor, and then the rest of it I'm just letting the experience. And if I'm just let go completely, which is easy to do when it's everything.
Yeah.
There's no agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like I lose myself there. But when there's an instruction which is to focus on the inside or the outside, that's when I'm aware of it's like a director.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's the attention, and then outside of the attention is awareness, and behind it all there's still that something, that director, which is like setting the agenda of this meditation, and
Mm-hmm.
that's the bit that I can't seem to let go of.
If there's instruction.
Of okay, we're doing Vipassana, or we're doing concentration, or that.
Yeah. Good. So obviously that sense of the doer of the meditation, that's important, that's interesting. Even if, let's say you're doing the meditation perfectly, 100% clarity on everything, that would be good, right? That'd be a powerful meditation. And yet if there's still a director back there, it's gonna, you can't wake up. The director is the issue. But notice, as we went further, it kept saying, now we're going to notice that thing in there, right? And eventually the idea is, if there's any platform you're doing anything from, if there's any sense of a direction that things are being seen from, anything like that, just notice that that's all just arising and passing and dissolving too. If you do that relentlessly enough, the director dissolves. Because we could even have done another 10 minutes where it was only on the director. We just did. That's when I was like, we could keep going, because that's the next step, right? Or one of the possible next steps. You just only look at the arising and passing of the thing that feels like it's doing the meditation. But it turns out that the thing that feels like it's doing the meditation isn't special at all. It's just more stuff happening. And so when you notice that, you'll, quote, lose yourself again.
Yeah, but I think that was it. That was the doer or director is really the thing that was trying to select where the attention was.
No, that's clear, that's obvious, right? That's what it means, but I'm just telling you how to undo that even while you're still selecting. And that is, select only for the thing that feels like it's selecting.
Right.
You keep doing that, at first it will be difficult, and then it will turn into a relentless hall of mirrors, where it's like the thing is watching itself, but it kind of relaxes after a while, and it goes back to, there's nobody doing anything here.
Right, but I get to that, but then everything's...
Then, sure. That's why we iterate, right? Then do it again, then do it again, then do it again. It's funny, there's no awakening that you can hold on to. So even if you had a full awakening 1 second ago, in this second you have to rehab it. Right? You can never, ever, ever hold on to that for another second. Right? It just doesn't work that way. And so even if you get there, in quotes, the next second you're trying to get there again, or you have to get there again. Or maybe if you're lucky it goes on for a while, but eventually, you have to eat or something. So you can't hold on to it or claim it as an ongoing something, right? It just doesn't work that way. The thing can be so amazing that it changes you drastically, but still moment by moment. If it feels like there's somebody who's doing something, or somebody who's observing something, or somebody to whom anything's happening, not awake. Right? So That you can be really clear, really doing super sweet Vipassana, but awakening's different. There's nobody there. You won't be there for it, right? So we just keep coming back to that. And even if you've had that experience a billion times, so what? Do it again. Be there again. Be it again. Yeah. In this, you're talking about the observer trap. It's got a name that we're talking about. It's the doer of the meditation, and it's the as I'm always using this phrase because we're in a land of coders, but it's like and engineers, but it's like the failure mode of Vipassana. Every technique has a failure mode. Every single meditation technique has at least one way it sucks and people can't get it, or it's bad, or it's got cul-de-sacs or whatever. This is the Vipassana cul-de-sac, is that you can get hyper perfect contact and clarity, high resolution, fine detail on the whole world around you. And still in the middle there, it's like Fred Flintstone on the dinosaur, like with the levers doing the meditation, right? And so that's not awake. It's just really clear, super clear. But there's a little guy or gal or non-gendered being in there doing the thing. And, or the better image is from, Men in Black, like the little alien inside the human body that comes out of the head, right? He's got the levers to run this guy's body. The guy who wrote that scene is a student of Shinzen, right, Ed Solomon. So he, the whole idea of the homunculus running the thing that's doing the meditation is coming straight from meditation. But that's the thing that gets in the way. That's like the last thing. The doer, or the observer, or the meditator. And so what do? There's a couple different techniques. One is, okay, you've got yourself down to that point and it's stuck and it's stuck and it's stuck and it's stuck. So just do something like Shinkantaza, right? Just sit there, don't do anything at all till that dissolves. Because there's nothing to do. So that's one way. Another way is the Vipassana way is to turn it on itself. So, which is what I just described. Make the object of the meditation the meditator. Because the meditator is just a little tiny version of feel, image, talk happening. Some thoughts and some feelings about doing a meditation. And all you've been doing the whole time is allowing those to be back here while it does the meditation over there. But the trick is to take that and realize it's not any different, it's just more of the stuff you're observing. And then it will pop. So the failure mode has a fix. It's kind of a hack.
Is it cheating then? Because when
are you going to cheat? That'd be so cool.
I will have these moments of like, oh, surrender, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
Right? But I don't know if that was a hack, because in doing that, I've forgotten myself, and now it's just pure awareness, but not even awareness of awareness. But I'm not following your instruction.
That's okay. I mean, please cheat.
Your instruction is what brings back the meditator, because he asked us to do this. I forget that, and then I come back to that.
Yes.
That's what prevents me from.
Yeah, so this is the thing, this is the endarkenment teaching. I'm here to keep you from getting awakened. Right? So keep pulling you out of your meditation. Right? You get to work with it how you want. You can wear noise-canceling headphones, not go to guided meditations, or you can you're doing the surrender version, try the Vipassana version. It's very weird, it does work. You just get relentless that there's no internal experience that gets to be outside the meditation. And even though you're relentless, because no arising gets to be outside, it will do the same thing. And it's interesting because instead of that kind of like, it stays all crisp and clear. So it has an interesting insight thing going on. So play around. You get to play around. experiment. What else? Jenny.
I'm
Jenny's here. Yay.
And so is Gabe.
Hi, Gabe.
And Gabe has a lot to ask.
Oh, good. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
ready? Hello, Gabe here speaking from the void. It's nice to be back. I experienced high flow to the point where the director dissolved momentarily. It's nice to be in that. And afterwards, when I open my eyes, the world is still spinning. I'm curious if you can start talking about this non-dual experience being at the heart of the great religious traditions, especially in Christianity and Judaism.
No. I did write a whole book about that, and that book is like filled with mistakes. I got to go back and like a bunch of good stuff in there, but I got to fix a bunch of it. But that's like a giant discussion, and it's really interesting because if we're going to be sort of inclusive and universalist and perennial philosophist, we could say, oh yes, it is all the same non-dual stuff at the core, and humans are humans, so maybe it is. But it's talked about so differently in the different traditions that maybe it's not at all. So I think it's an open question, an interesting open question, right? And in fact, a lot of, I was just posting about this article that my friend David Chapman wrote about the history of Buddhism in America and how much of the Buddhism that we've got, mainly the Southeast Asia Theravada, Vipassana tradition, it was actually completely reinvented in the 1850s, right? Like totally re-engineered on purpose to sound like religion to white oppressors so that we wouldn't try to push Christianity on them too hard. And so it already has built into it features that sound like Judaism or features that sound like Christianity on purpose. And so it makes it a lot easier to go, oh, these are all the same tradition. I keep looking at the camera because I'm talking to Kate. But actually that was on purpose, right? It was done on purpose to help these countries stay liberated from colonialism. So it's really, really easy to say that maybe it's all the same tradition, or maybe it's all the same non-dualism, and we are just experiencing it differently. But maybe it's not. Maybe different traditions really were investigating different parts of human experience and talking about it certainly very differently. And it's, like one giant human exploration that everybody's talking about a different part of. I'm not sure. This is why I want to go back to that book and talk a little bit more like, because when I was writing it, I felt really universalist. Like, yes, the human experience is non-dualism. There it is. And yet, to do that, you have to like ignore a lot of stuff. So I'm not sure, Gabe. But it's an interesting, super fascinating question. What else, you guys? Yes.
Thank you for that. This meditation was, I'm having, what's funny is coming in and out of pain, physical pain, and that was delightful in the sense that it's there, I'm still, there's this. When we were guiding the meditation, say, well, be here, be this, the body, and then allowing myself to have whatever is happening. And then the pain in the foot would start to remind me, but it didn't remind me of anything, it just made me more present. And the ringing in my ear, there's a ringing in my ear. And but it was not felt delightful because it felt present. It is the way.
Turns out it's really easy to concentrate on pain, right? Because it's grabbing your attention. And if it's small enough that you can deal with it, it's a great way to keep coming into presence, right? So something like an itch or a sore joint or whatever, if it's not too sore, it's just there to bring you back over and over and over and over and over, and that can be awesome. And then at a certain point, it's too much. It's awesome. Great. Yes?
I found one of the instructions a little bit confusing.
Only one?
Only one, yeah, the rest were great. Good job. The instruction to notice thoughts without losing myself in them.
Yes.
It seems like thoughts are in a category in the stream of their own where I can't have them without losing myself in them.
So there's the edge of your practice. Because right now you're saying, no, they're different. They're so sticky that I can't unstick. But it turns out, as your practice develops, you can unstick. And so that will be interesting to keep playing with. Can I meditate on thought, yet stay outside of it? Right? Just contacting it, but not, dissolving into the fantasy of it. And the way to make it easy is you don't think about the content of the thought. You don't pay close attention to the content. You pay close attention to the phenomenology of the thought. So, the experience of the thought. So like I was saying, it's a wave of just stuff happening. Or mental talk is just some sound going blah, 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 blah. Or a mental image, right? Cat's paws. And it's just stuff happening. And on that level, you can stay with it, stay with it, stay with it, stay with it. So that's how you do it.
But does it, it seems like when I do kind of notice it, it's very short, it just blips instead of being a fully formed thing.
Well, that's an insight, is that currently, if you get really focused on your thinking, it gets shy.
So in your experience, you can just observe and see the thought evolve and continue.
Yeah, but then eventually your concentration will get really, 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 really high, and kind of anything you pointed at sort of starts to just turn into waves and maybe dissolve a lot. And so it might be the case that thoughts are arising, dissolving, 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 but they haven't stopped. It's just that you've gone way deep in the well, and so they never need to complete, right? They're just, so it's, thoughts only need to complete when you're really focused on the content. When you're focused on the phenomenology of just activity, they just kind of fall apart as you look at them. And it turns out that is ecstatic. The fountain of thoughts dissolving is very pleasant. Even if they're just vanishing, your whole mind just keeps fucking dissolving. Turns out that feels pretty good. So instead of being like, oh my God, I can't have thoughts, I hate thoughts. To be enlightened is to not have any thoughts. It's like resistance, 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 it's like your mind is the enemy, or monkey mind is the enemy. Just throw all of that in the garbage. It's like, no, just contact the phenomenology of thoughts arising, and that itself is can take you deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, not only into the naturalness of your own mind arising, right? It turns out that thoughts arising isn't any different than, a flower blooming, or a hurricane, or some kind of snail moving on a wet log, right? It's just stuff happening. But even deeper, it can just start to be continuous vanishing, and that is really, really powerful. Right? Because then the sense of self, which is made of thoughts and feelings, is continuously showing its impermanent no-self nature, right? And there's no self outside to watch that, so, That's waking up, and that's waking up through total acceptance of every thought. Not somehow like, oh, I gotta stop. Thoughts are bad. No, just be with it. Yes.
You're saying this, and it's just kind of reminding me of my experience where I was coming close to the thought and noticing the gravitational pull and getting lost in it, and then being able to pop back and just kind of playing around with the sensation of that pull.
Yeah, what's the real name of that pull?
The real name of it.
Yeah, at least in Buddhist practice, it has a name. Any guesses?
No.
No guess, not even a guess.
Seduction.
Yeah, it's clinging or grasping
Right,
or
okay.
wanting. So, it's like that's not gravity from the thought. That's the mind going, oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, what was really interesting was I was noticing also the not wanting, because
Yeah.
there was a slight aversion of like, oh, like I'm trying to be over here, and yet there's this pull. And then the not wanting became really interesting, like the sensation of not wanting, of aversion.
Right.
And so it was interesting that through noticing the relationship that I had with the thought, I got to really touch upon these other aspects of.
That's how you meditate, right? That's awesome. So there's two ways the not thinking, the desire to not engage with it can happen. One can be aversion, like, oh, I know that's a horrible thought and I'm going to pull away from it. But another one can be sort of like tight grabbing onto that, surrendering into the grasping like hurts. Okay, and that's not aversion, that's wisdom, right? That's the suffering aspect of that Buddhism is always talking about. Like just even grabbing onto content in that absorbed way hurts. And you can feel it happening. And so after you notice that a million times, you'll just start going, what if I just don't grab onto it? Don't grab onto it, don't grab onto it, don't grab onto it, right? And that's, again, that's waking up. You're not gripping onto sensory experience. And it turns out you can even do that with stuff that you think is impossible, like external sound. You just hear, right? You don't do anything to hear, but it turns out you're actually doing something to hear. Your mind is grabbing onto the content. And at a certain point, if you notice that grabbing clearly enough, you can just relax, and no sensory content will arise, which is interesting. That's not like, oh, you have to get to that state or you're not cool or whatever, but it is interesting to notice that even things that seem like automatic sensory processes are gripping. Right? Yeah, so exploring that is like the thing. Yes?
I have two questions, they're follow-ups in some ways.
Just yell.
I notice for some of my thoughts, it's easy. It's actually to really.
Which it?
What do you mean?
What's easy?
To look at it's more of the arising.
Yeah.
In some, it feels like what Eckhart Tolle would call like pain body. It's just like, it's the best that I can do is after a while realizing that I was caught by it.
Yeah.
So do I do a different treatment for these?
They just, it requires that you do it over and over and over and over again and notice, wow, with those ones, that gripping is just so unconscious. Well, how do you make unconscious conscious? You sit there and just observe, 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 observe a million times. And eventually you'll notice, there it goes, I'm going for that. And you let go instead. But there's another way to do it, which is what I was pointing at is, if you're just noticing the phenomenology of thought, it's very hard to get gripped by it. Because in a way, you don't even know what the content is. And so it turns into a 3D flow of just stuff arising. Yeah. Oh, question number 2. Okay.
Question number 2.
You're at 2 for 1.
Yes. rising process, constant process. But as soon as there is movement in my body,
Why do you think I tell everyone to sit fucking still?
and I get it. So that's my question. Does it mean that you learn these things by sitting still, and then how do you bring them in your movement life?
By bringing them into your movement life. But how do you do that? You do it one really simple thing at a time. So that's why so many traditions are like, start out by being mindful of doing the dishes. Because, you presumably know how to do that without thinking too much, and it's just like a sensory thing with water. And so you start just noticing that. Or let's say you're just kind of auto doing the dishes, and then you start working with thinking while you're doing that, because it doesn't take too much effort to do the task. Like that, you bring your practice into something simple. And then little by little, you get used to doing it. That's the big accelerator. It's like the catalyst. The gasoline you can throw on the fire of your practice is just doing something all day long, no matter how simple it is, because it's going to build mindful awareness. And then when you come back and sit down, instead of having to start from scratch, you're starting from like a little bit of momentum. And then that feeds back into the daily walking around practice. So if you want to get really good, really fast at doing this, do something like that. Yes?
So how would you integrate this into your daily life without becoming like a total snail and like everything you focus on doing it super slowly and taking forever to walk from one place to the next?
You don't want to become a mindfulness robot, a mindful dork. Well, just in the way I said, take the activity into something that is already simple, even doing it at normal speed. So washing the dishes, or if there's no activity that wouldn't get weirdly changed by you being mindful, then do stuff like be mindful of breathing while you're using the restroom. Nobody's watching, hopefully. You're just going to the bathroom, so be mindful of your breathing. Or when you clean something, right? Be mindful of the cleaning. Just don't go slow. Be mindful fast. Right? You got to find things that are simple enough at first, but that phase will be short, because if you do it relentlessly, you get a lot better at it. And then fast things, it's okay to stay with. Turns out inner experience of thoughts and feelings is really fast too, right? So if you're getting good at that on the cushion, you can start to work with stuff as you're walking around.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah. So get hyper creative. Remember I was just saying that all of Theravada Buddhist meditation practice was just invented like 120 years ago, right? The manuals were there, but they searched Southeast Asia for anyone who knew how to meditate, and there wasn't a single person. And what people, like the monks, were chanting the meditation manuals as like liturgy. And so on. There was no actual sitting practice left. And so guys like Ajahn Mun, and Mahasi Sayadaw and all these people developed this stuff, redeveloped it from the manuals. And so, because the manuals are really good, we have powerful practice again, and rich tradition and all that. But it also kind of lets you know, you can work with this. You can get creative. It's not like you have to do it a certain way or you're doing it wrong. Like, make it your practice. Find out what works. Talk to other people, It's much more interesting when it's a creative group endeavor. It seems like we finally discovered that with, people really starting to share hardcore meditation manuals like The Mind Illuminated or Mastering the Core Teachings of the Buddha, stuff like that, where it's like, let's really talk about this in excruciating detail. And guess what? Everyone's doing it completely differently. And so that's really interesting. Even people, from exactly the same practice tradition interpreted it all differently. And so the more we talk about it, the more creative we get, the more we make it our practice, that starts to become really, really rich, powerful, intriguing. Plus there's a whole bunch of stuff that got left out when, they were reimagining it to basically uh, calm white people down, like, don't take over our country. They made it look like Protestantism, so they left out a lot of the like crazy ass stuff that was real and beautiful, rich, traditional stuff that was in there that was amazing. So there's all kinds of stuff we haven't even explored at all. I remember I was in this retreat where they had the Diary of Ajahn Mun, and I'm like, oh, it's like the guy who, one of the few core inventors of modern Vipassana practice. Let's see what this guy was doing. What he's in the jungle, for years and years and years. But I mean, it's like channeling angels and gigantic visions of celestial hosts teaching meditation. I mean, it's totally different than the stuff that we got here from, like kind of a consensus Buddhism, right, in the West. So it's really interesting. There's a tremendous amount of stuff, not only to be, let's say, just to know is possible, but also for us to just recreate in whatever, in whatever, and when I say us, I mean as individuals and as a Sangha and as various cultures to experiment with. So make it your practice. Yes?
So is anybody working to like recultivate practice prior to 1850 when they sort of...
That's what they did. They were looking for what practices were done before. That was the whole point.
Who's they?
4 or 5 different people in Southeast Asia.
So they were looking for what it was prior to 1850, where they kind
In
of...
other words, there was a several hundred-year span where the actual practice of sitting had vanished. And instead it was purely religious stuff, like, like rituals and chanting.
So we're actually doing it, is that right?
Yes,
We're reinventing it right now,
and it will continue to reinvent forever, all over the world, yeah.
because we don't have to go underground like that, or whatever.
Yeah, just feel radical permission to explore your practice. Right? Yeah. Yes?
I'm fairly new to meditation, and I'm kind of at the point right now where my mind is calmed down quite a bit. I don't have monkey mind or racing mind, but when I'm meditating, I keep trying to come back to my breath, and as I calm down, my mind always just shifts into daydreaming or whatever, and I can catch myself, and it's like, oh, get back to the breathing. It's almost like more effort to get back to the breathing than just let my mind wander, I guess. So I'm trying to get some suggestions.
Yeah, so that's a particular stage, where it's like dullness. And what's weird is that can get very seductive, like it
It's
kind of,
pleasant, actually, yeah.
very pleasant to just go into this daydream, right? And so lots of people just end up there forever, like, well, that's my meditation. I just calm down and get into a pleasant daydream. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's better than, shooting tequila all day or something. I mean, all day. But, it's sort of a cul-de-sac. And so what you want to do is, remember I kept saying bright, sharp, clear, fine-grained clarity? That's what you're looking for. So it's, even if you're in a daydream, have bright, sharp, clear clarity about that. But if that gets a little too hard to distinguish, then definitely pull yourself out of any daydream and just come back to, it's better to be a little busy than to be in that cloud.
So it's better to put the effort in it.
A little effort,
Get
just,
out of it. Okay.
yeah, it's definitely very worth doing because you'll go way deeper than that. There's a much deeper thing available than that.
Yeah, I hear about it. It sounds great.
Yeah. So there's just these layers of the brain kind of, we, in normal life, we kind of only have two modes, on and off. So we're either like go, 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 or conk out and go to sleep.
Right.
And so when you start playing with what's in between those two things, it can feel like, well, if I'm not going hard, I'm sleeping. And so your brain just thinks time to sleep, and it gets all foggy. So what you want to do is be able to be bright even when you're relaxed. Now there's a new mode available. Wow, I can be completely relaxed and very awake. Wouldn't you rather be awake for all that pleasant relaxation? Right, and very aware of it. So that's what you're looking for. So perk up.
So you're saying it's okay to be on those thoughts as long as they're sharp, or is it always better to try to gently push those away, get back to your breath, or whatever meditation?
It depends on which technique you're doing. With the one you're doing, just keep coming back to the breath with as much brightness and clarity as you can. Yeah. Jenny,
I have another one from online.
who is this?
Brasnaro.
Okay.
Is eternal director another version of image talk, feel, or an attribute of experiences, like the sense of occurring in a space that comes with an experience?
In the way I'm talking about it, we're just looking at the miniature feel image talk of the director. Yeah. Boom. What else? Ray. Hi, Ray.
Hi. So I have reached this really delightful stage in my meditation where I've been able to, through the course of the sit, get very relaxed and allow the thoughts to come and so forth, and then they sort of quiet down, and then I can watch them arise, and I'm starting to be able to see the gone a little bit.
So when the thought vanishes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by thought, I mean specifically in this case, mental image.
Okay. So the
And-
image arises and then that crumbles away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then it gets quiet, and I don't see thoughts, and so I wait, and I wait, and sometimes I want to manufacture mental image just to start to see it arise. And it can be
Yeah.
any content, but am I kind of screwing it up by
You're
manufacturing?
totally screwing it up, Ray. God. You'll always do that. No.
Well, that's what I want to check.
Right. No, in terms of the sort of like basic technique, don't manufacture anything. It's whatever's happening. If nothing's happening in that field, in mental image space, you have a couple choices. You can just sit there and keep contacting nothing in mental image space, or blankness. That turns out to be very relaxing. But you have to stay alert and just keep noticing no images. If you do that long enough, actually way, way, way down in the unconscious, there's little mental images happening. And so it's worth sometimes just sitting with seeming nothing happening, because actually you'll start noticing stuff you weren't noticing before. It's a lot of background image or a lot of subtle image. Or you can just say, right now, I don't want to sit with blank. I'm going to switch to a more active channel. Switch to the channel where something's happening, and then go with that. Okay. However, that was all just the basic technique. As a special exercise, you could sit there and manufacture images and just let them dissolve. Just keep noticing that. Why not? It's observing impermanence. It's interesting. But yeah, just recognize that that's its own thing. There's a lot of tonight, so I don't know why. These things just occur. If you want to read about the history of Vipassana, all the stuff I was describing, it's really interesting. There's a short summary article on David Chapman's blog about Buddhism called Vividness.life. And it's like one long page where it just summarizes all of it, and it is mind-blowing. I knew this stuff, but rereading it, I was like, oh, I forgot how completely crazy this was. It was super interesting. Or there's a big fat book called, I think it's called something Buddhist Modernism. No, it's I think it's the rise of Buddhist modernism or the something of Buddhist modernism. It's like that. Making of Buddhist modernism. Thank you. And that will go into it in extreme detail. So very, very interesting if you want to get historical. Yes.
Did they really construct everything from nothing? Because
Not from nothing, from the texts.
From text, right?
All the texts were there, but
Sure,
there was
but it's
no
still-
practitioners,
it's
zero.
Still, it spread to China and got really weird in Tibet, and then
Sure.
and then into Japan with Zen.
Yeah,
So
but remember, over and over again I said, Vipassana meditation in Southeast Asia. So of course, Tibetan Buddhism, that's a different story, Zen, different story, but when we're talking about Vipassana, that's what I'm describing.
But Zen has elements of Vipassana in there. It's not completely different. At least my understanding of it.
Yeah, but they're not, they're coming from Zen scriptures, they're not going back to the Pali Canon and bringing that in, right? It's a different thing. In any case, the people in Southeast Asia who reinvented it didn't go and ask some Zen teachers or go and ask Tibetan teachers. They took it, they went back to not even the Pali Canon so much, they went back to various commentaries like the Visuddhimagga, Satipatthana Sutta, and stuff like that, that are very specific instruction and just trying to recreate how you would do that. And there's like a history of them doing it, so you can check it out. Anything else? Let's meditate. Good. Again, that would have been fun to continue, but time-wise we can't. That's it for me tonight. I'm going to be gone next week in Colorado for the weekend teaching a retreat. Hope some of you will be there. It's going to be fun. And then I'll be back after that. So, who's doing announcements?
Great.
Ray is doing announcements.
Rats, because I don't have my phone to announce our upcoming classes. It is fantastic to see all of you here tonight. What a fantastic class. And we are coming up on 6 months as the Dharma Collective. And we are all in this together. So it looks like our message of bringing your friends and spreading the word is really getting out, and it's fantastic. So keep an eye out soon, because we are adding programming and we're adding special events as well. And with our 6-month anniversary coming up, we might have some things in the work on that. So where do you get the programming? We have a great calendar up here on the wall. We're also on all the social media channels. We have sits every night of the week, and now we're starting to even double up on some of those sits. So some nights we have 2 different classes on the same night. We have a new lineup of teachers coming in. We have space for additional programming. We have day-long sits, and we have workshops that are going on. You put me on the spot. I wish I had the calendar.
You're doing a great job.
We all are here in this space right now because of all of us. And through your generosity of giving Donna, and through the generosity of our teachers, and through the generosity of our sustaining donors, we are able to offer this space. And so I would love to encourage you, give tonight if you can. And if you love these classes, go online and think about becoming a monthly donor. Any amount is wonderful. Any amount brings this class and these messages to all of us. And through our discussion tonight, clearly I think we're all getting some pretty crazy experiences. They're great to be able to share. Because I don't know about you, I can't share this in my day job. I love being able to share it here. So thank you for that. Anything else, Genevieve? All right. If you are interested in volunteering, if you love Michael's class and you want to help volunteer tonight's Thursday night class, let us know. If there's another night that you love classes and you would love to volunteer on that night. We have a sign-up sheet. You can contact us through Facebook, email, social media channels. The more the merrier. It's all a group together, so thank you.